Welcome back to The Big Picture. We're talking about Election Day 2019. My guest is Calabrese. And Carol, you know, the city of Buffalo. I don't know if you think there's any surprises there, but virtually every member of the Common Council is Democrat. We have a Democrat mayor, although he wasn't running in this race. Chief judge of the city court is Democrat, and I'm not sure, but I would guess that all the city court judges are Democrat.
Yeah.
So literally the entire city of Buffalo is one party, okay? 100%. Now, if you think about it, the country of Venezuela, which is a communist dictatorship, 40% is opposition party. I mean, and we've been a one-party city for 50 years or more. The last Republican who was mayor was Chester Kowal in 55 years ago, 54 years ago. People in Buffalo vote Democrat, and overwhelmingly, consistently. Why? That's the question. Why?
A lot of reasons. Some are historical and traditional. You know, you're born into a Democrat family and you grow up that way, and it's kind of passed on almost like your religious faith. And you feel disloyal, you know, leaving it because of tradition. That's part of it. Other parts of it are you like the philosophy of the party. If you're dependent on government for whatever, the Democrat Party is the party that you're probably going to look to and support because they support your needs. But the other reason is the fact that, you know, as you know, I teach at the University of Buffalo in a class called Local Government Policy and Politics. And in the first class, I give them basic rules that make American politics work. And one of those rules is when there's only one side in the fight, it usually wins. And that applies not just to political campaigns, it applies to issues. Okay, if you're a town board member and the town board room is filled with opposition to policy A, you're probably going to agree with opposing policy A. If there's two or more groups, now it's a little more complicated. In the city of Buffalo, the Republican Party has basically abandoned the party now for decades, or abandoned the city for decades. And there's no competition. There was only one Republican on the ballot for the city council. That was in the Niagara district. The rest of those city council races were determined on primary day between Democrats fighting each other for the nomination. And so when you don't have a second party in the room offering alternatives, what do you expect? You know, so that's part of it. That's a big part of it.
I'm sure that is. I mean, obviously,
you can't win a race if you don't have a horse in it, okay?
Well, that certainly makes sense. And so is that because there's no Republican leadership in the city, or because they've just given up? I mean, how do you put your finger on that?
This goes back decades. This goes back decades of the party falling further and further behind, and yeah, lack of leadership and trying to analyze, okay, how do we stop the bleeding and then reverse it? That takes strategy, it takes tactics, it takes money, it takes, you know, looking far down the road, it takes motivation, lots of things. And for whatever reason, the party has not found the right cadre of leaders within the confines of the city of Buffalo to make that turnaround. And consequently, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And so, yeah, it's a big hill to climb, and it's gotten so bad it's now become part of Republican strategy to say, oh, this is a good thing because we only got 20% turnout in the city. If we have races, that may, and you know, if we had competitive council races, that would have stimulated turnout, and they would have been Democrats, and that would have worked against our countywide candidate. So that's the vicious cycle the Republican Party finds itself in. It would love to be competitive in the city, more competitive, but the double edge of that sword is, by doing that, it could hurt your countywide candidates for sheriff, controller, county executive. That's the dilemma.
Wow, that's yeah, it is a dilemma. You know, I don't think it's good, you know, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I don't think it's good for an area to be so dominated by one party. I mean, it's just there's no creative thought. There's no creative policies that come into play. You don't have any thought about how to advance things. It just becomes, you know, well, everything's status quo. Don't rock the boat. Let's do. And then again, because there's one party in charge, there tends to be a buildup of, you know, bad habits. because there's no accountability.
No check or balance, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's true of either party. That's
Right.
true of
I mean, it doesn't
Republicans or
matter what
Democrats.
party it
Doesn't
is.
matter, yeah.
One party is not healthy. I mean, there's no competition, and competition is always a good thing.
Yeah, when the cat is away, the mice play. And in this case, the cat is a second party to check and balance the first party.
Well, I don't think we're going to settle that.
No, we're not. But that's
today.
the situation that you find yourself in.
Around the outlying areas throughout the rest of the county, you said there was some progress in different races and some seats changed. In Grand Island, for instance, first Republican as a supervisor in a lot of years, right?
Not that many. The past supervisor, Nate McMurray, defeated a long-term Republican incumbent named Mary Cook, and he only served one term. I think what you're referring to is West Seneca.
Oh, West Seneca.
The West Seneca.
That was what?
Yeah, they
several
elected a
years.
Republican. It was 50 years since a Republican was a supervisor in West Seneca. That was, a surprise.
Any
that jumped
particular
out.
reason why that happened?
Local issues, just local issues, and when you get into a town like West Seneca, it's not a real big town. I don't know, 16, 18,000 people. If you've got deep roots in that community, if you've been active in the service clubs and the churches and the organizations that make up the town, and you run for office, you can overcome the party enrollment issue because people know you. You're not just a person, you're a friend, you're a neighbor, you're a fellow Rotarian, you go see them in church, see them in the stores. That means a lot in local government and local politics.
Does in an election like this, on this level, local level, does the trend in the national scene have any influence? Like the country is doing fairly well now under a Republican president in terms of the economy, and arguably the foreign policy, trade, and so on. There's some progress being made, and a lot of people's estimate, we're doing better in terms of not being taken advantage of, and so on. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, unemployment is down, the economy is up. That's happening under a Republican. Trump, has kind of stimulated the energy a little bit. Does that translate at all?
I didn't sense it in this race for county executive. I just didn't see it play a major role one way or the other. If I know what happened. I mean, all the candidates do polling, and I'm sure they tested that issue of would it help or hurt to make Donald Trump part of this campaign. And the fact that Donald Trump didn't show up either way tells me that their polling gave results that said no, these are about local issues, and we'll take up the presidential race next year. This is about Erie County. That's my hunch on it, because I know the polling is done and I know those questions are asked.
Yeah. And the same thing with the statewide races that didn't bring people out to vote. The governor wasn't running this time, right. And so there wasn't a bigger picture that kind of played into the turnout and to the issues.
And next year you will see the turnout. Next year in a presidential year, I know from a standpoint that both parties have higher turnout, Democrats especially. In a presidential year, you can usually see 20 to 25% greater turnout of Democrat voters than you would just the year before in a local election. So you wait until next year. Next year, I believe, is going to be hyper voting across the country. I think both sides are motivated, energized. They've got fire in their eyes, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, and I just think it's going to be a huge turnout. It's going to make it difficult to predict the winner.
Well, just to depart from 2019 election day, just for we've got 2 minutes left. The upcoming 27th district, okay, Cuomo needs to call a special election, and your partner, Vic was in here, Vic Martucci was in here a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about how, from a strategic point of view, if Cuomo were to put off a special election until primary day coming up this spring, there is no Republican running for president in the primary, but on the Democrat side, there will be plenty of action. So most of the Democrats will show up and very few Republicans. that would be an advantage in the 27th district for whoever is running. And that's kind of a political strategy. Do you think that that's what's going to happen? Is he's going to wait and use that to his advantage?
Those are the cards he's been showing thus far. He's talking about an April 28th election for a special election, which would be on the same day as the presidential primary. In addition to a June primary, we have two coming up next year. So if he did it, and Vic's absolutely right, as you just stated, if he does it on the presidential primary date, given the interest on the Democrat side in their presidential candidates, yeah, that's going to pull out a lot more Democrats than normally would be the case, than would Republicans. It gives them a structural advantage. I don't know if it's enough to overcome the redness
right,
of NY27.
And in the meantime, the district goes all this time without a representative.
That's correct.
So it's to the detriment of the people of the district. I'm not sure whether they'll consider that when they vote, an anger factor, if you will. But it's a political strategy.
Right, and whoever the Republican candidate is, and that person will be designated by the 8 county chairs for the special election. Whoever that is going to make that an issue. That we've got to get our side out here as a statement of support of Donald Trump. So you'll see that presidential factor play big time in NY27 for April.
As you say, there will be plenty of energy coming up in 2020, and we'll be talking about it plenty as well. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Big Picture. I want to thank Carl Calabrese for being my guest. It's politics is always interesting. The contact sport, other than the Buffalo Bills.
And a recession-proof business. There's always going to be an election.
Always, always. I want to thank everybody for watching The Big Picture. This is your program, and we welcome your feedback and your suggestions. Also, thank you so much for watching WBBZ, your local TV station. This is your TV station, and we really appreciate it. We'll see you next time on The Big Picture.